Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, Anthony Power and I are going to be dissecting HIVE's January production results, CleanSpark earnings, and talking about the crazy price action we're seeing with Bitcoin and correspondingly the Bitcoin mining companies during today's trading session. Now we've got a lot to go through, but before we do, please take a second, hit the like button, you guys. It's 100% free to do and it's a huge help to myself, Anthony, and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let me know in the comment section below what you thought about CleanSpark results, which of the miners that we cover are your top pick for 2024, and your price target for Bitcoin as we approach April's halving event. Now with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, you've got the dynamic duo back, Anthony Power and myself. We're going to be dissecting HIVE January production results. So this is one of the last companies to report January results. We're going to be walking through that. We also have a preview or recap of CleanSpark earnings. Now, I wanted to give everyone a heads up. We've actually reached out to CleanSpark. We've got Matt Schultz coming on the channel next week to talk about the earnings in more depth, but we wanted to get Anthony's take on that as well. Obviously, a huge catalyst for the market today. And then finally, we're going to be talking about just that, the price action we're seeing with Bitcoin on an absolute tear today, and obviously all the Bitcoin mining companies as a result. So a lot to cover today. Anthony, why don't we start off with HIVE January results and your thoughts on those?
Yeah, so you're quite right. The last company to announce their results from the North American miners that we currently analyse on a monthly basis was HIVE Digital. And as we've indicated in all the other updates up to now, production was down for the month of January for HIVE because of the amount of transaction fees, significantly reducing from December. So that bonus all these miners in December didn't quite go to plan in January. But HIVE still managed to produce 234.6 Bitcoin in a month. And that's, an average of 7.6 a day. Now, they were producing 9.1 Bitcoin a day in December. So, that's a big difference. That's like 17% difference. But 17% difference isn't as bad as some of the miners. So, a lot of the miners were in the sort of like 20-25% bracket. So 17% isn't as bad. What we're seeing now is that effectively in January, they relied solely on their ASIC mining facilities. So it was all Bitcoin mined with using ASICs. In previous months, they've had a small element of their Bitcoin mining using their GPU operations. But in this month, it was all ASIC mining produced. And the average, the hash rate for the average for the month was 3.85. And again, that's slightly lower on what it was in November. So, there's obviously, some other impacts on there. And, the weather, bear in mind where HIVE Digital have their sites. We're talking Iceland, Sweden, 100 miles south of the Arctic Circle, where the temperatures got to like minus 40 degrees Celsius. And so that has an impact on mining. On a positive note, though, they didn't sell any Bitcoin in the month of January. So they've increased their HODL by 14%. And they're one of two companies that didn't sell any Bitcoin, the other being Marathon Digital. So that was a really good thing to do. Obviously, they feel, the price of Bitcoin with all the action that's going on regarding the spot ETF funds. They're eating up Bitcoin on a daily basis. We're talking, today, I think it was yesterday, $500 million of Bitcoin were snapped up by, 7 or 8 of the big funds. And that's happening on a sort of like a daily basis now. So, that's going probably better than people thought. So, that'll impact on the price. And we'll talk about the price a bit later. So, it was a good update. The other thing that they've got coming on is they've just started to receive their batch of S21 ant miners, which, at the moment, we've covered this in a previous podcast, the most efficient mining machines on the market. They've got 200 terahash of efficiency. Production rate of 200 terahash and an efficiency of 17.5 joules per terahash. And what does that mean in real terms? It means it can produce Bitcoin for the price of about $10,000, which is significantly lower. If you looked at, I think it was Iris Energy's update, they mined Bitcoin in January at around about $18,000. So, if HIVE can get, $10,000, and that's assuming their cost of power is about 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So they've received some machines. They're going to get more of the machines coming during February, and that will add about 1.4 exahash. So we expect at the end of February to see a big bump in HIVE's hash rate. So just under 4 exahash at the moment. We'll see them cross the 5 exahash probably, in 3 weeks' time. But yeah, overall, a good update considering the fact the fees were down and it affected everyone. But in terms of production, solid top 3 for HIVE. If you look at it from an exahash position, again, utilization was good. And also, if you look at revenue achieved by petahash, they were also scored well in that metric. So, generally we get good updates from HIVE Digital, and January was no different.
Yeah, nice to see them growing and protecting that hodl. I know Marathon actually went out and bought Bitcoin last month as well. And as you say, Anthony, the buying pressure is now truly outpacing any of the grayscale selling pressure. And we're starting to see that in a big way on the price of Bitcoin. I read an article last night. I think the Bitcoin spot ETFs are the best ETF launch in 30 years or something like that, and took in more money than about 99.9% of any other ETF. So definitely a lot of demand out there. The other point you mentioned, I just wanted to bring up, a couple of videos ago, we asked a question, does the cold weather have an impact on the performance, good or bad, of the machines? And we actually had someone reach out saying the cold weather doesn't necessarily help or hinder, but if you do have any sort of liquid going through these machines, obviously a freezing risk. And the snow itself does have a big impact on the ventilation fans and a lot of that kind of thing. So appreciate comments like that and adding any insight that you guys can pull together. Great update from HIVE, Anthony. Now let's move along to CleanSpark. So they just came out with earnings. They definitely took advantage of the new accounting treatment. So I know you'll get into that in a lot more detail than I probably could. And the other thing I wanted to mention is CleanSpark was flirting with, I haven't looked lately, but about a 30% gain on today's session alone. So we see a lot of the miners up 10, 15, 20%, but CleanSpark on the backs of that earning announcement yesterday, just off to the races, eh, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, the miners had a great day yesterday, actually led by Iris Energy. They were up 23, nearly 24% yesterday, followed by Marathon Digital, also above 23%. And actually the average increase yesterday was well over double digits for all the miners. So, positive day. Then last night at 9:30, CleanSpark presented their quarterly update for the last 3 months of 2023. So up and including December the 31st. And, from a high level perspective, they had a net income of 25.9 million. So just under 26 million. When you start looking in the accounts, there are some points to note, though, and you're quite right. You alluded to the fact that the miners are now, we're going to start seeing them using the new accounting treatments for valuation of Bitcoin. So in the past, when Bitcoin was valued on the balance sheet, you could only revalue the price, the Bitcoin value, if it dropped. So we know that the price of Bitcoin dropped all the way down at the end of 2022 to around about $15,500. And so, previously, miners were never able to actually put into the accounts any increase in the value of Bitcoin. What we've seen here is that CleanSpark now are using these accounts as a first effort now to show the gain on the fair value of Bitcoin that they had in that position during that period. And that gain gave them 36 million benefits in their operating cost statement. So, a higher valuation than they were recorded in the balance sheet. So that is taken as into the income statement as a benefit. So if you look at that 36 million benefit for the increased value of Bitcoin, that sort of wipes out that net income then. So, but remember, some of these costs in the income statement are non-cash costs. So I like to look at the cash costs to see if the company can actually, physically carry on, receive money in, pay the bills, and, have a net effect that way. To look at the production for the last 3 months of 2023, CleanSpark mined 2020 Bitcoin, producing a total revenue of 73.7 million. So if you look at that from a per coin perspective, that's $36,535 for every coin they mined in that 3 months. That's the revenue side of it. Now let's break the cost down a little bit. So in the operating costs, you've got things like G&A costs, you've got salary costs, you've got professional fees, and you've got some interest. And in some companies' case, they also receive interest as well as paying interest. And this CleanSpark's one of those companies that does that. So from the cash perspective, and I look at the cash costs. So at the moment, I ignore the depreciation, I ignore the stock compensation, and we'll come on to those in a little while. But if we take their G&A costs, which include the salary costs there, that came to 10.3 million. Other operating expenses of 1.5 million, and they got a net benefit of interest of about 40,000. And when you add that total together, that gives you 11.9 million. If we look at it from a Bitcoin perspective, that's 5,894 per coin. So remember what I said before about the cost or the revenue received from mining a Bitcoin was 36,000. The operating cost is 5,894. But the biggest cost that they have is the actual energy cost. And the energy cost for the last 3 months of 2023 was a total of 28.9 million. And if you break that down into Bitcoin, per Bitcoin, that's $14,308 per coin. Add those two costs together, you get 19,423. And so you've got, an operating profit of about 46.8%. Which is good. And actually, if you look at it from that perspective there, you can start to understand now why the CleanSpark share price today is just rocketing through that 30%. But I think last time I looked, it was like 37%. So, we've talked before about the Bitcoin price. Bitcoin price is up 4% today, Bryce. And, some of these mining stocks are, a lot of these mining stocks are in double digits. No one's anywhere near CleanSpark. I mean, they're on a sort of like a place of their own at the moment. But that's really because of the market obviously sees those results and the cost of mining and the cost and the operating cost to mine as being extremely good when you look at the price of Bitcoin. Now you take that 19,423 per coin as a cost now, and as we approach the halving, we know that effectively that cost will double because you're going to get rewarded half the revenue for every dollar of cost that you're actually incurring. So in simple terms, you could say that the cost to mine a Bitcoin the day after the halving is going to be around about $39,000. Now at today's price, the Bitcoin price is heading towards 48,000. So even after the halving, we can see CleanSpark still in a profitable position. And what else do we know about CleanSpark? They're ramping up their hash rate as we speak now. So they were 10.08 exahash at the end of December. I think at the results yesterday, you can add at least another 2.5 to that, with a further 2 coming in literally in we're talking days time. So they're on track to get to that 16 exahash as they forecast sort of like during February. Now that extra 6 exahash will be really efficient mining machines. So, you'll see the efficiency come down, the cost to mine come down, the fact they'll produce more Bitcoin. So those costs that we've just talked around there will be spread across more Bitcoin as we approach the halving. And once we go into the halving, the cost to mine will come down because they have a bigger hash rate and they'll have a bigger percentage of the global hash rate. So it sits really well for CleanSpark. They're the first miner to announce their results. And it's a good set of results. We've got Iris Energy coming out next week, and I think Riot Platforms the week after. So we're going to have 3 miners where I'll be able to do very quickly a comparison then for each miner to determine what these results look like once again. Because in isolation on its own, you can't say too much because the Bitcoin price did rally. If we look at the previous 3 months, the price of Bitcoin average for those 3 months from July to the end of September was around about 28,000. So for the next 3 months, it was at 36,000. And for the 3 months of the first part of 2024, it's going to be sort of like, if Bitcoin stays where it is now, probably 40 to 45,000. So this increase in Bitcoin is going to give some real good benefits to the miners as they start producing their their earnings reports.
And Anthony, I can't even imagine once like MicroStrategy and Marathon, Hut 8, the companies that have the real big hodl, they start taking advantage of this new treatment. And as you say, the difference from the lows to where Bitcoin is now and in subsequent quarters, it's going to be quite substantial for these organizations.
Absolutely. So you're right to articulate that. So Marathon have a hodl of nearly approaching 16,000 coins. Hut 8 over 9,000, and Riot have got well over 7,000 coins. CleanSpark themselves have got just over 3,500, but they're showing now that they're literally hodling all their coins every month now. So they're looking to grow that hodl. Now, this is great when the Bitcoin price rises. When the Bitcoin price comes down, and we know that the Bitcoin price goes in cycles, the opposite will be happening to their account. So, where you've got the likes of, say, TeraWulf or Iris Energy that are using their Bitcoin to, grow their strategies and, not utilize the at the market offerings that those companies have as well as the ability to sell their Bitcoin on a daily basis. We'll see what the impact of that is, when we get to the next cycle where the bear market starts to happen and these companies then start taking big losses across their accounts. Because it's nice to see when the Bitcoin price has gone up, and it's gone up now for 13 consecutive months. When it starts dropping, and that might be, in 2025, or it might be, earlier. I mean, who knows what the price of Bitcoin is going to be post the halving. So, but we know that from previous cycles, the Bitcoin price does have a bear cycle as well. And we saw that towards the end of 2021 and the whole of 2022. So, you're going to see a 13, 14, 15 month potential bear cycle if it follows previous routes. And when that happens, when Bitcoin went from 69,000 down to 15,000, all the miners were having to show that loss on their accounts because it affected all of them, apart from maybe the ones that were selling on a daily basis. And at that point in time, there was two clear miners who were selling while everyone was hodling, and that was CleanSpark and Iris Energy. They had this mantra about, growing and selling Bitcoin and getting good revenues in when it was 69, 50,000, 40,000. Some of the other miners just held on to it for dear life, and the price dropped. And then everyone started selling it when it got to like close to 20,000. So, we're prepared to sell at 69,000, but when it gets to 20,000, we're all going to sell our Bitcoin. And, you saw some big miners selling big chunks of their mines.
Like I tell you, buy low, sell high is the easiest thing to learn, but it's the hardest thing to execute because it's impossible in real time to know if things are going up or down, right? But no, good analysis there, Anthony. And as mentioned, we've got Matt Schultz on next week. We also have HIVE on Tuesday. So we've got HIVE Tuesday, CleanSpark on Thursday, and then we've got Riot the following week towards the end of the month there. So a number of big interviews. We look forward to having those. Again, make sure you guys drop the questions in the comment section below. Now, Anthony, I know you and I don't like to predict price because I just said it's impossible. That's not really the focal point of this channel, but it's hard to ignore when you see price action like today. Bitcoin is on an absolute tear. I haven't checked my phone in a little while here, but as you mentioned, a lot of these companies are up in excess of 20%. And that's coming off yesterday where a lot of them were up double digits as well. So we talk about volatility on this channel, and unfortunately, we've really been suffering through some downside volatility over the last few weeks in light of the ETF approval and a lot of that grayscale selling. But it seems we're starting to get through that selling pressure. And as you alluded to, the buying pressure is enormous for Bitcoin. Not to mention, we're going to have the FOMO, fear of missing out, people jumping in. I know a lot of my friends, like you say, nobody talks to you about Bitcoin when it's at $20,000. But now that it's nearing 60 here in Canada, all of my friends are wanting to know more about Bitcoin. So very interesting dynamic. But I wanted to just get your 2 cents on what's happening here, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's two impacts. There's the price of Bitcoin as we speak at the moment, edging very close to 48,000. So 47,900 as we speak now. That has an impact on mining shares because the miners mine Bitcoin. So every increase in the Bitcoin price affects their revenues, affects their margins. So the Bitcoin price goes up, higher margins for the miners, and therefore, the market will deem that as a positive thing. Take into account, if we only go back 6 weeks ago to the end of December, there's literally only one miner that's managed to get higher than its price in December at the moment, even though we've had a fantastic rally these last 2 days where miners are sort of playing real catch up, probably gains over the 2 days, some edging over 30% at least. But CleanSpark, from what I can see at the moment, is the only miner that's achieved a higher price than it did in December. And that's obviously down to the fantastic, the way the results have been perceived by the market. So, good set of results there. If we go back to December, I think there was like 6 or 7 miners that had a market capitalization of over 1 billion. And at today, we've only got 3. So we've got the three, the 3 big ones, and that's Marathon. We've got a market capitalization of about 5.3 billion, and that was 6.5 billion in December. So again, Marathon's had a good 2 days of share price, but it's still way behind because we saw these shares pull off about 50% from where they were at end of December. So they're still playing a little bit of catch up.
Hey, and just a comment there, Anthony. If shares go down 50%, you guys, they need to go up 100% to get back to where you were. So just careful with that one.
Yeah. Riot platforms, they're just over the 3 billion mark. And they were over the 3 billion, 4 billion mark in December. So they still got to play catch up. CleanSpark are just under the 3 billion mark now. And if you remember, I think it was like November, I put my tweet out when they'd achieved reaching the first billion. And, that was an amazing target for them to achieve. Market capitalization of $1 billion. And then all of a sudden, 12 days later, they'd achieved 2 billion. So it took them 3 years of mining to get to the first target, and only 12 days later, they'd actually doubled that target. So that's how the mining shares can change. And people ask me on a daily basis, why are people investing in mining stocks? And that's the reason why. The Bitcoin volatility, we know, and today's a good day. It was really good for the Bitcoin price. It's up 4%. CleanSpark's up 37%. Iris Energy is up 17%. A number of other miners, Wolf's up there, most of the miners are double digits today, and yesterday they were double digits plus yesterday. So we can see that the volatility in mining stocks does appear, it is liked by a certain type of investor. We're not giving any financial advice here. We're not saying people go out there and buy CleanSpark, but that today's results of CleanSpark coming out there has given all the miners a bit of an up there, because I think the expectation now is as we start seeing these results come through, we'll start seeing a number of miners start giving positive income positions for those last 3 months.
Well, and how great for CleanSpark that they just happened to report on a day where Bitcoin's absolutely surging like this, right?
Yeah, I mean, timing's everything, and but it's positive. It's positive, it's positive news. But I'm sure if you think in 2023, and we take away, no miners made a profit in 2023. I mean, Marathon had an accounting profit because they, got rid of a lot of their debt for like 20% of the company. So, that was an accounting amount of about 90 million. That put them into profit, and so they were able to sort of like highlight a profit. But if they hadn't got rid of that debt, which they're only paying 1%, bear in mind now, that debt, those shares that were given for that debt at 20% of the time, those shares are probably worth 2 or 3 times what they were at the time. So for the shares that got issued on that debt, it was a really good deal for those. Maybe not so much for the shareholders of Marathon, because they gave away a large amount of the company. But 2024, when we start seeing these earnings come through, it looks like we're going to see some really green earnings reports as we go through. So it's going to be positive, and I expect all these big miners to come out with similar profit positions. Looking at the cost to mine a Bitcoin, that was a really good price, of 19,000 for CleanSpark in that last quarter of 2023. But bear in mind, Riot achieved a lower cost to mine in the 3 months before that. Now, that was helped by the energy credits, and there wasn't as many energy credits in the last 3 months of the year. So it'll be interesting to see what Riot put out in a couple of weeks' time with their results, and we'll be able to sort of like give an indication there. But we know that when it gets warmer, and the demand, goes up for energy, Riot and some other miners will benefit from their strategies that they use there. So they achieved a significant amount of credits in 2023, and the likelihood is they'll do that in 2024. Plus, they've got their Corsicana site coming online in literally a couple of months' time, and that gets them like CleanSpark to 20 exahash by halfway through the year. So we're going to see some really positive moves this year for sort of like those top 6-7 miners. But yeah, a good couple of days. Bitcoin's doing well. We're all happy, and live another day.
Well, it might be time to go out and get a nice dinner tonight, Anthony, Friday night. You guys, thanks for tuning in. You know where to find us, whether Bitcoin's up or down. We'll be here talking about it. We really appreciate the support. If you're still watching, make sure you hit the like button, you guys. It's a huge help to both of us and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. Give us a follow on Twitter or X as well. We'd love to have you. With that being said, Anthony, thanks so much for your thoughts today. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday.
And you, Bryce. Thanks for having me.